Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. During this holiday season, we wish all of our fans, our friends, our subscribers of the Police Off the Cuff family a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year. Whatever holiday you celebrate during this season, we hope you are having a great holiday season. You know, this case, though, this story we've been covering with the corruption scandal with Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry, Lieutenant Quantisha Epps, and we have to mention also Mayor Eric Adams. One of the reasons that I say we need to mention him is because Jeffrey Madry is his guy. It's his. He's part of the whole Eric Adams entourage. Goes back many years with him. And that's one of the things of the culture of policing as well as the culture of politics. Politicians as well as the police department, big bosses, and even right to the rank of sergeant, they want to surround themselves with people who are loyal to them, people that are their people. There's no questioning that, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, when the people that you surround yourself with, they start dropping like flies, like when we look at this is Mayor Eric Adams' crew when he first started as mayor here, and you could see, look at all those resignations. Mayor Adams himself has been arrested and charged where he's awaiting to be tried. Just last week, his chief advisor was just put in handcuffs and arrested for bribery. So what type of message does that send to the police department and others who may try to darken their oath and just do the wrong thing, you know? And these are the things that we question. And then when what we're following now, this scandal is really, as far as being scandalous, it destroys this job. It really destroys this job, you know? And we see this was from a while ago, Mayor Eric Adams' empire falling. And we cannot talk about the corruption on the police department without talking about the corruption in the Adams administration. It just goes hand in hand. And if you're not giving or showing a good example by appointing the right type of people, the people that aren't going to resign, the people that aren't going to look to use their position to make money, then your whole administration's got a problem, you know? And this, I think, is one of the more outrageous things that I've seen happen on the NYPD in regards to corruption. Pretty outrageous. Anyway, folks, hang on to your hats. Hang on to your seats. Hang on to your drink. Hang on to your loved ones. Hang on to your wig. Hang on to your toupee, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now, a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, BELIEVE, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Joining me today to discuss this very important topic of NYPD police corruption, because even this incident touches every single person on the NYPD. And of course, it stains the job, stains the shield, and it makes people believe that the NYPD is corrupt. And it's never been a corrupt organization. Yes, every police department is going to have times where there is corrupt officers, but as an organization, no. I'm very proud of my service with the NYPD, and I'm very proud of telling people that I was on the NYPD for 27 years. And now, when this just stains the department, it's very hurtful. Anyway, joining me today is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome.
Bill, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
You know, Mike, when we discuss this case, discuss and discussed sounds almost the same, and it's really hurtful, and I think that it really does stain the shield, tarnish the shield, whatever you want to say, and even more hurtful when it's the highest ranking uniform member of the service is the one involved in this corruption, and it's very disturbing, absolutely disturbing. And I don't personally know Chief Jeffrey Madry. He was a Brooklyn guy. I was a Manhattan North guy. But he came up through the ranks. He started out in traffic, and then got on the NYPD. Look, for all of us, we never considered traffic as part of the NYPD. It was sort of absorbed by the NYPD during the, the defund the police movement type thing. Let's just add them to so we can lay off them, not real police, right? Anyway, Chief Madry has almost 35 years on the job. So you may question, and from everything I know or people I've spoken to, he's a hell of a nice guy. I don't know what kind of a cop he was, but everyone says he's a great guy. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, I remember from the 80s, we'd have our anti-corruption, training, things like that. And, you get your internal affairs division testing, they'd drop a wallet and see if you'd pick it up and vouch for it. They'd follow you around to see if you got a cup of coffee for free. I remember there was a little scandal because a female officer got 3 scoops of ice cream rather than 2, and she paid for 2. I mean, this is the kind of petty stuff that you heard many, many, many times over the years. And so, these small things, okay, they're an annoyance, they're silly. It's not a big deal. But when you get corruption, this much money involved, and it's at the very top of the department. Chief Madry is the top uniformed officer of the department. He's the chief of the department. He has 4 stars on his collar. You don't get any higher than that. When it reaches that level, and it went on for that long and that much money, it is a huge embarrassment to the police department. It really hurts all the way down, because you want cops, patrolmen, sergeants, and detectives to stay clean. And then you have this going on. It kills the morale of the department. This is going to be a long-standing stain on the NYPD.
When we talk about overtime, overtime is an important thing to have on the NYPD, because people don't realize, like, the cops out in the field that work overtime, it's not free. It's time away from your family, right? It's time where you don't sleep. So if you go in for a 4 to 12 and you make an arrest, you work through the next day. And guess what happens at 8 o'clock in the morning? You automatically get put on a day tour.
Yeah.
So you may have worked 24 hours straight for that 8 hours of overtime. So the 16 were on regular time and the other 8 is overtime. So it's blood money, as we used to call it,
Yeah.
But this was what seems to be stolen overtime. And for Chief Madry to act like he knew nothing of it doesn't pass the smell test, because first of all, he's the highest ranking uniform member of the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Lieutenant Quantisha Epps, all right? Allegedly, she was working 70 hours a week. That's impossible, all right? It's impossible to do that. And she made $400,000. How long did it take them to see what was going on, to realize that this was going on? Now, what we have to question as, say, citizens, taxpayers, people watching this from the outside, wait a minute. How long did it take them to realize that she made $400,000? She was the number one overtime person in the city, right? And what was she doing? She was doing administrative work. Overtime generally is not used for administrative work. And why would you need to work all that overtime for administrative reasons? Can you explain that to me, Mike?
Billy, it doesn't make any sense at all. She is a lieutenant, and she has what we call special assignment money, which means that she gets her lieutenant's salary, but she gets bumped up to the next pay grade, which would be a captain. So she's a lieutenant, but effectively she has the pay of a captain. However, if you take a civil service test and you get promoted to captain, your overtime is time. There's no cash. But if you're a lieutenant and you have the SA money, the special assignment money, you have, because you're a lieutenant and there's no cap on your overtime, you can take overtime when it's given in cash or overtime. If you're required to do something like an arrest, a parade, whatever it happens to be. But she was an administrative. She wasn't on patrol. She was in an administrative capacity in the NYPD. And she had a Monday to Friday, like 9 to 5 job. And so she's putting overtime in, like voluntary overtime, which should be time. When I worked in the NYPD Department Advocate's office, my last 18 months on the job, I had to come in on Saturdays to prepare for a trial on the following Monday. I would get 8 hours time. There's no way you would get cash. So how she is putting in slips for overtime, 8 hours like a day, and getting 8 hours cash a day overtime is beyond me. That's a real scandal. And the weird thing is, it only seems to have been uncovered when the local paper, the New York Post, uncovered it. This is really sad. It was probably not something that was a secret. It was probably an open secret, and many people probably knew about it, but were too afraid to say anything. But it's really horrible that she got something she was absolutely not entitled to under any circumstances.
Tom Cusinelli, he violated the patrol guide big time, charges and specs. Saw it all the time when I was in the Department Advocate's office. Tom, one of the things we want to bring up is that Chief Madry did not resign, as all the newspapers reported that. He put in to retire because they have 30 days to approve his retirement. And as you say, Tom, he should get charges and specs. Right. That would stop his retirement. That would put it in abeyance. But I will guarantee, well, I can't guarantee it, but I will bet no one will do that. And those 30 days will go by and they'll say, oh, he's retired now. And there's not a thing the department can do after those 30 days. Professor Mike.
Billy, that's what happens a lot. We used to see this in the Department Advocate's office when someone would fail what they called a dole test, which is a random test to see if you had cocaine or marijuana in your system. And so if you tested positive and you popped the dole test, then you would be put on notice. You'd be immediately given charges and specs, suspended. And the and everybody wanted to retire. Like, I don't care if I've got 12 years on the job, I'm retiring. 14 years, I'm retiring. 19 years, 364 days, I'm retiring suddenly. The NYPD could put that on hold, like you say, for 30 days. And we would have to actually have the trial on the 4th floor in the Department Advocate's office within 30 days, have the trial and get the decision. It would have to go up from the trial judge up to the 14th floor from the police commissioner, and it would approve it, and then you'd be fired. It had to happen within 30 days. That's a civil service rule. And so I guess you're right. Probably they're going to say, we just couldn't get around to it within 30 days. And there'll be a backroom deal. And most likely, I hate to say it, but I'm a big cynic, they probably will both leave with what they think that they're entitled to. The only thing I could hope for is that maybe somewhere along the line, in order to maybe allow them to retire, there's going to be some paying back of cash that they got that she was not entitled to.
You know, Tom Cusinelli, I remember serving charges and specifications on captains and DIs for that stuff. To explain to our audience, those are department charges. And if you have charges and specifications, you go to the department trial room.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something very, very serious like these allegations, they could stop him from retiring. And like they stopped her. They stopped Quantisha Epps from retiring. She was suspended. So they stopped her retirement. So now she was suspended without pay. So right now she's not getting paid. But her response to that, of course, is to file an OEEO lawsuit with the feds. And anyone who's ever filed an OEEO, or from what I understand, they would rather file with the feds, the federal government, than with the department, because then all the department people are the ones that make the decisions on it. If you go to the feds, it's viewed as more fair in regards to someone that may file those charges. So what the department can do in vis-a-vis Chief Madry and Lieutenant Quantisha Epps is to hold their retirement off. Have you heard Chief of Department Madry suspended? I haven't either.
No.
So we used to call that white shirt immunity, that the bosses that wear white shirts, they are under different rules than everyone else. Let me play this little short clip here.
That Police Commissioner Jessica Tish is continuing to make staffing changes within the NYPD. This comes just 1 week since former NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry resigned amid sexual misconduct allegations. Fox 5 Jessica Formoso joins us live from police headquarters in Lower Manhattan with more on all the changes. Jessica.
And Richard, these changes are not a shock to many. As expected, Commissioner Jessica Tish is cleaning house. She has ousted NYPD bosses. We're talking about the chief and now deputy chief of internal affairs. Now, Fox 5 has learned that the PC has made recent personnel changes in internal affairs and also in former chief of department Jeffrey Madry's office. Internal affairs deputy Chris Morello has been removed from his post. This comes a week after his boss, Chief Miguel Iglesias, was relieved from his command. The two are in charge of what could be the most important bureau at the police department. They were in charge of making sure there were no crooked cops. Now, the New York Post reporting 6 members of Madry's office, 5 detectives and 1 police officer were sent to walk the beat in public housing. This all comes following the sexual misconduct allegations surrounding the former chief of department, Jeffrey Madry. His subordinate, Lieutenant Quantisha Epps, filed a complaint against the city last week, claiming she did unwanted sexual favors for Madry in exchange for overtime. Madry says their relationship was consensual and that he had no authority over approving any overtime. Epps, who had held an administrative post in Madry's office, was the NYPD's top earner in 2024. Records show she made more than $400,000 in overtime. Half of it was overtime pay. Now, once these allegations came to light, Madry resigned. Now, today we spoke to retired NYPD detective Michael Alcazar about what these moves by the commissioner mean for the department.
Well, we don't need to listen to him. So again, they reported that he resigned. He did not resign. He put in to retire. And to understand what that means, he has almost 35 years on the job. So his pension will be huge. I mean, huge. Probably $25,000 to $30,000 a month. So you can understand what's at stake here for Chief Madry. However, his lieutenant, Quantisha Epps, she may have a bigger problem, because if she was putting in for overtime that she in fact never worked, that's called a crime, called grand larceny. And if you got paid for it and you never worked it, and it's pretty easy to investigate that, did she show up at work? There's no remote working for a lieutenant assigned to the chief of the department's office. You cannot work remotely. There is no option to do that. So that defense is out the window. The other thing that where there's a little sort of, you know, the internal affairs chief is a lower ranking chief than the chief of department. So if this is his lieutenant and this lieutenant is putting in all these overtime slips, he may not feel he has the authority to challenge the chief of department on this, even though right now the chief of department, Jeffrey Madry, is running for the hills. I had nothing to do with overtime right now. He has everything to do with overtime. He is the number one man in the department that is responsible for the budget of the police department. You know, he's the chief of department. So to try to take that position, I know nothing, I see nothing, you know, it's just not believable. Kay Schmidt, thank you for the $9.99 super sticker. This is a really big shakeup, Bill. How are you with all of this? Thanks for covering. You know, there's some really good people on the NYPD in the ranks of chief and above. But, you know, I've heard people say that everyone above the rank of inspector all of them should be forced to retire right now. I don't know if I would go that far, but one of the things that I find a little disturbing is, look, the mayor has been arrested. You know, he was indicted for federal corruption charges. Doesn't that have an effect on the police department when the mayor himself has been arrested? You know, let me play this little clip.
Big breaking news tonight. For the first time in the history of New York City, a sitting mayor has been indicted for crimes. ABC News reporting that Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted by a federal grand jury. We do not know yet the exact charges. Federal authorities have been investigating Adams and members of his staff, issuing subpoenas for documents and cell phones. Several members of administration have resigned, some of them also friends of Mayor Adams. Again, Eric Adams, the 110th mayor of New York, has been indicted by a federal grand jury. We'll have the latest online and tonight on Eyewitness News at 11.
So what does that do for your entire administration? And as I showed earlier on, many people from the Adams administration have resigned or been indicted. In fact, just last week, his chief advisor took a pinch for bribery. So I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Let me play this here.
Story: the mayor's former chief advisor, Ingrid Lewis Martin, led down the courthouse hallway in handcuffs this afternoon, pleading not guilty to bribery and conspiracy charges. The Manhattan DA calling it a case of quid pro quo. Let's get out live now to Dick Brennan in Lower Manhattan with the new developments tonight. Dick.
Well, Maurice, Ingrid Lewis Martin, two businessmen and her son were all here in Manhattan court today pleading not guilty to charges of bribery, money laundering, and conspiracy. And in the meantime, their attorneys say they're really going to fight this.
We're very confident that the New Yorkers, using their common sense in this courthouse, will understand the ridiculousness of these charges.
Arthur Idala, the attorney for Ingrid Lewis Martin, gave a preview of his defense of his client.
I know there's a political motive here. This is ridiculous.
Lewis Martin was chief advisor to the mayor, but today her hands were cuffed behind her back when she entered court, pleading not guilty to bribery and conspiracy.
Today's announcement addresses corruption at the highest levels of city government. The indictment unsealed today can be summarized in 3 words: quid pro quo.
The Manhattan DA charged that 2 businessmen paid $100,000 to Lewis Martin and her son, Glenn Martin II, which he allegedly used to buy a Porsche and other luxury goods in exchange for influence with the buildings department and other favors.
We allege that real estate developers and business owners, Rosada Pinky Vaid and Mayank Dravidi, paid for access and influence to the tune of more than $100,000.
And prosecutors say Lewis Martin moved to cover up the conspiracy, in part by using an encrypting messaging app and using coded language in a text message.
Quote, please only use Signal for asks.
This is just the latest charges facing a member of the Adams administration. The mayor is charged in a federal corruption case, but the Manhattan DA says Adams has nothing to do with the case against Lewis Martin. Now, the judge in this case says next week he wants to have a conference with lawyers and perhaps even defendants to talk about the case. It's not clear when this might go to trial. Maurice.
So, Dick, we heard the defense attorney there, Ayala, calling this thing ridiculous. Do we have a sense of how strong this case actually is?
Well, Maurice, as you know, the U.S. Supreme Court is making these cases harder to prove. They've certainly raised the bar for prosecutors. Now, the prosecutor, as you heard Alan Bragg, he said, hey, this is quid pro quo. You did this for me, I do that for you. But Arthur Adela was saying, wait a minute, folks, you can have two acts and they each could have happened, but that doesn't mean there's a crime. For example, he says, yes, Ingrid Lewis Martin could have made a phone call, as she does for many constituencies. And yes, her son could have gotten checks. But unless you can prove that the two of them are linked, then you don't have a case. And that's the challenge for the Manhattan DA, Maurice.
So the reason this isn't specifically about Mayor Adams or his staff, but the police department is the biggest organization, the biggest budget of the mayor of New York City. So what type of, how does this influence the NYPD when the mayor and so many of his staff have either resigned or they have been arrested for corruption? And again, this speaks volumes. Looking at this little fired, charged, resigned. The former police commissioner resigned. Philip Banks resigned. So what message does that send, Mike?
Hey, Bill, they say the fish rots from the head, right? From the head on down. You want all civil servants, whether they're sanitation, fire, corrections, NYPD, whatever they happen to be honest in their dealings and not to take advantage of their civil service position to get some sort of enumeration, as they would say, money, whatever it happens to be, free stuff. And, people do, and I've seen this in NYPD. There are, most all people there are very honest and they're just trying to make a living. And they're, and then you have this happen. It makes it really, it really just kills everyone inside, because you're like, why should I, worry now about getting something for free when the mayor is getting trips to Turkey and getting, this, and her son is getting a Porsche for making a phone call? That doesn't seem quite right. So, it really kills morale. It's a morale killer. And we've seen this in the NYPD the last couple of years, tremendous numbers of resignations. And it really puts a damper on everyone's spirit. I'd rather have 10,000 cops that are really motivated and honest than have 30,000 cops. And, most of them are downtrodden, no morale, and, and don't really want to do the job anymore because they feel like, why should I? It's a morale killer. It's terrible. It's a disservice for everyone in the city. Cops, every citizen, all 8 million people, and everyone that does business in the city. It's a terrible disservice to all of them. And it's really sad. When it really comes down to it, it's this tawdry behavior that we've seen, all over. And it's got to be punished. And we hope it is actually punished. When you're looking at Ms. Epps, if she got about $200,000 in overtime, that's a grand larceny second degree under New York State Penal Code 15540. It's a Class C felony. She could, theoretically go to prison for that sort of thing. This is serious stuff. This isn't like, oh, they just had an affair and, and something happened. No. This goes to the very heart of what leadership is supposed to be. There's absolutely nothing consensual in that relationship, no matter what Madry said. You cannot have that change, that difference in power, and call it consensual. It's nonsensical.
Rocky K9, thanks for the $2 super sticker. Fish rots from the head, not the tail. Yes, I think that's, if he didn't say that, that's what I think he meant to say. That's,
oh, yeah. Fish rots from the head. Sorry.
That's true. Let me go to this press conference, and this is Chief Jeffrey Madry with his attorneys, who just This press conference just isn't even believable, what they're presenting here.
Can't tell you because we are anticipating litigation in the civil context, but there is a lot we want to tell you to set the record straight, because there's a lot out there in the media that is just not correct or is only telling half of the story. And that's why we called this press conference. So thank you for being here so that we can set the record straight as best we can. Jeff Madry started off in the NYPD as a traffic agent. In his over 34 years with the NYPD, he worked himself up from traffic agent to police officer to sergeant to lieutenant, all the way up to the highest ranking uniformed member of the NYPD, chief of department. That was about 2 years ago. He's credited for saving this city during the George Floyd riots. In the last 2 years as chief of department, he's driven down violent crimes, shootings, homicides. Through his work in supervising the operations of the approximately 33,500 uniformed police personnel of this city. He's a beloved member of every community he served, community he lives in. And if you ask any cop, they'll tell you he's a cop's cop. Last Friday, December 20th, there was a complaint filed in the Office of Employment Opportunities setting forth certain allegations by a Lieutenant Quatisha Epps against Chief Madry. Those allegations included sexual abuse, taking advantage of her fragile situation, and using overtime to pay for sexual favors. We can tell you now, those allegations are a lie. They're not true. We deny every aspect of them. We'll tell you right now that Lieutenant Epps, since October of this year, has been under investigation by the Internal Affairs Bureau of the NYPD for putting in for overtime she never completed. So she's under investigation for stealing time and putting in for overtime that she never worked. Now, Lieutenant Epps got caught with her hand in the cookie jar and is trying to deflect her wrongdoing by making these allegations against Chief Madry in the hopes that she'll get away with part or all of her scheme. However, the truth is, Lieutenant Epps had a consensual adult relationship, albeit for a short time, with Jeff.
You know, one of the things I want to ask here. First, they did not admit to any relationship whatsoever. They said the whole thing is a lie. Then they realized that there was no way they could carry on that lie, and they admitted to a short-term consensual. Where did this relationship take place, though? On the 13th floor of One Police Plaza? And as you said, Mike, a boss cannot have, by the OEEO laws, Office of Equal Employment Opportunity, by the federal laws, by the state laws, cannot have a consensual relationship, sexual relationship with a subordinate. Impossible to do.
That's right.
So I don't know what law school this guy went to, but it's false on its merit, what he just said, Mike.
Billy, where did this happen? When did it happen? Was it on company time? During the office hours when they're supposed to be working? This is so tawdry. It's horrible. It's like, I'm a college professor. I cannot have any sort of adult relationship with any of my students. I don't care if I took if they had me in one class and they have 30 other classes with 30 other professors. I cannot have that because I am a professor. They're a student. That doesn't fly. Doesn't even make the straight face test that this was consensual. He is the top police officer in the entire department. He's responsible for the day-to-day operations of a 30,000 police officer department. Doesn't get any bigger than that. Everybody works for him. She works for him. This is not consensual in any way, shape, or form. It was quid pro quo. She got what she wanted. He got what he wanted. You can't call this consensual because there was a huge power differential, and there's no way that that anytime you have a boss saying to someone who works underneath them, I want something, and they refuse, she could probably be transferred. And you know about this. They'll take you, say you live in Rockland County and you work in the 50th precinct in the Bronx. They'll transfer you to the 123 way out in Staten Island or the 100 in Coney Island. So it takes you 4 hours to get to work and 4 hours to get home. So therefore, this is not consensual in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't pass a straight face test whatsoever.
Retired NYPD Captain Tom Cusinelli. Mike, IAB could have worked with the district attorney's office and had some charges and specs drafted and served them on her as she sat in the pension section.
That's right. That's right.
Tom, and for everyone else listening, what I don't get at all is you don't think Madry knew about this investigation by Internal Affairs, even condoned it, so it wouldn't come back on him that she was. How about the chiefs? That the chiefs of Internal Affairs were just transferred, the two top bosses, because they didn't do the right thing. That also shows there's some collusion involved here. There's something like they wouldn't do a clandestine investigation because of the rank of the person involved. So does that teach us something for the future? If someone at this rank, at this level, should there be another level to go to? And I guess that level would be the district attorney's office, which, as far as them handling internal NYPD business, it's looked upon as, no, we'll handle our own dirty laundry, But in this case, clearly, the IAB chiefs and bosses at the top, the highest level, they didn't do anything. A, they could be friends with Madry, and B, he outranks them. So, that's his, so-and-so. So I'm not going to lay a glove on him. That would be career suicide, I want to play, this was an interview with Chief Madry by David Ushery. Let me play a little bit of this here.
Exclusive. Earlier, I sat down with the NYPD's former Chief of Department, Jeffrey Madry, 1 week after he abruptly quit in the face of graphic, salacious reports that he demanded sex from a subordinate in exchange for generous overtime pay and other perks. Those allegations coming from a member of his office, Lieutenant Tish, who described him as a predator and demanded sex from her and other favors since he was elevated to Chief of Department. This is just the latest bombshell involving the upper ranks of the NYPD and Madry's first interview since the scandal surfaced. He says he wanted to share his side of the story.
And I just wanted to come out and just stand up for myself and tell everyone that these accusations are not true.
Well, let's get into a little bit and ask about the one that is making the most headlines. Did you force sexual favors from a subordinate, NYPD Lieutenant Tish, starting in June 2023? She's a ranking officer. Did you force that in exchange for overtime approval and other perks signed off by you?
Absolutely not.
What happened here?
Me and Lieutenant Epps, we worked together starting in early 2022. We were working together for about 1.5 years, and we were working together. One thing led to another. We had an office flame. And that's all it was an office fling.
Consensual relationship, you're saying?
Absolutely consensual.
How long did that last?
We had got together a couple of times. It was really nothing to it. There was no room.
Wow.
Okay.
Can you get away with that, Mike? That it was an office fling, it was consensual, and it was really nothing to it.
Billy, you know, it doesn't pass the straight face test. It never did. It never will. Well, look, we know there's always been those sort of things going on with a sergeant and a driver, or detective and another detective. People marry on the job, and then they work sometimes in the same precinct, and occasionally these things go south. This is the highest ranking scandal of that type that we've ever seen. And for, Madry to admit that he actually had a consensual relationship, what he thinks is a consensual relationship with her for a short period of time, that sinks him. Because I guess he has to admit it, because there's probably text messaging, emails, and everything else that would point to, and maybe pictures that would point to this going on. So we'd have a hard time, if he said, no, it never happened, and then say, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I had all those emails and all those text messages and, that sort of thing. But this is horrible. This is really horrible. And it kills the morale of the NYPD, because when you see other things going on at a much lower rank, and they get prosecuted in the by people like me, when I was a department advocate in the trial room, you sit there and you say, well, there is really different spanks for different ranks. If you're a patrolman with a silver shield, you're a detective with a gold shield, you're a sergeant with chevrons, you got one form of justice. But if you've got bars and a white shirt, and you got captain's bars or whatever, there's different ways to be treated. That's inexcusable. And we've seen that, time and again over the years, but this is the worst we've ever seen it. And I can't believe that he would have this press conference and this is how he would respond. I guess he has to. He's kind of painted himself into a corner. But it's tawdry and it's unbecoming, both for him and for Epps. It's really horrific.
Tom Cusinelli, no investigation needed. He admitted it. Yeah, but let's see, Tom, if anything happens, anything comes to this, Jane C., when your chief gives you an order, your subordinate feels obligated to comply. It's not consensual. Jane
That's
C.,
right.
Mike brought that up before. You're absolutely 100% correct. Kim Robinson, consensual enough to get overtime payoffs for both schemes. Well, if this is a quid pro quo, and then it gets to a different level it gets to criminality, especially if Quantisha Epps, the lieutenant, was stealing the overtime and not actually working the overtime. Yeah, that would be a whole different level. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real-time true crime from a police perspective, in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that red subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you could subscribe to us on our YouTube channel membership. And we appreciate all of our friends, our friends, and our subscribers. And we really appreciate everything they've done for us in 2024 and look forward to more of the same in 2025. Let me continue playing the rest of this press conference.
Man, we weren't girlfriend, boyfriend. We had an office fling, and that's all it was.
You're the chief of department. Some may look at that and say it may have been consensual, but you had far-reaching powers, and this was a subordinate. Do you think that was appropriate?
It wasn't appropriate for me to be in a relationship with anyone.
And so let me be clear. You're saying that you had a consensual relationship with Ms. Epps. And that she's essentially lying in this EEOC complaint. What do you think her motivation is to do this now?
Would you mind if I answered that? Because,
Mike, I note that this attorney's wearing sneakers. He's chasing a few ambulances in his time.
Yeah. Oh, it's bad.
What happened here seems to be that Lieutenant Epps is under investigation internally by the NYPD since October. And the allegations are that not only was she putting in for excessive overtime, but that she was actually putting in for overtime that she had not completed or done, so that she was effectively stealing time. So when she put in her retirement papers, 2 days later, the NYPD suspended her. And they suspended her because of suspicion that she had committed a crime, which is stealing overtime from the NYPD.
It was abrupt.
Yes.
And some would say, well, if you didn't feel you did anything wrong, why did you leave so abruptly?
Well, there was a couple of things going on when I made the decision. I was already making a decision, and it was really weighing heavy on my mind. I was entering 35 years, almost completing 35 years of city service. I knew that I was going to have to fight, and I didn't want to have the constraints of the police department, being the chief of the department, holding me back from fighting properly for my innocence. When you're in the police department, I can't say certain things. I can't do certain things. I have to have the Chief Madry persona. When you talk about my work speaks for itself. Driving down crime as a chief of department, all right? What I've done out there in the communities, what I've done in Brooklyn North, all right? I have given so much to the city, so much, and I've never asked anyone for anything in return, all right? Countless people who can never repay me for what I've done for them, all right? And I've never looked for repayment, not even from the lieutenant. So for her to try and spin a story like this is very hurtful because I've given so much to the people of this city.
During our conversation and during a press conference today with select members of the media, the former chief and his lawyer claim they have evidence backing up their statements. The relationship with Lieutenant Epps was consensual, and they say it includes intimate text messages and images. We've reached out to Lieutenant Epps 3 times today. We've not heard back, but her legal team did respond to the Associated Press, saying Madry's lawyer's admission the former chief had a sexual relationship with Epps undercut a previous statement denying every aspect of the allegations. And, quote, we have a treasure trove of digital data that will hopefully bring this degenerate to justice. The NYPD also responded, saying they take allegations of sexual misconduct seriously and will thoroughly investigate.
My question here, Mike, is I'm going to give you my prediction. And it's a very cynical prediction. Chief Madry will get his pension. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind he will never be prosecuted. Lieutenant Epps, they're going to cut a deal with her too. She's going to get her pension as long as she drops her OEEO lawsuit. That's my prediction. Your thoughts?
Bill, I'm a cynic like you, and I think you're probably right on. I would bet my paycheck that there is no justice. I mean, we have St. Jeffrey talking about how no one could repay him for all the work he did and all the change and all the wonderful things he did while he's engaging in this ridiculous, adult relationship with Epps. She's no saint. She talks about him being a degenerate. She got $200,000 that she was not entitled to. That's grand larceny. If you robbed an ATM machine and took $200,000 out of it, you'd be arrested. This is awful. But I bet you're right. She will be her team will be told, look, we'll let you have your way, but you drop any sort of allegations against the NYPD, New York City, drop your EEOC complaint, and you'll disappear. You and I have been around the block. You, me, and Phil have been around the block many times. And I think, even Tom Cusinelli, he knows, he's seen this sort of thing happen. And, you bite your tongue and you don't say anything, you just move on. But I think that's what's going to happen. I agree.
Jarvis Dreamer, shouldn't she have to pay back the overtime if they prove she didn't work all of those hours? Jarvis Dreamer, as we just predicted, being cynics and being around the block a few times, they'll come to a negotiated settlement. Look, we're not going to pay you all of this overtime because you weren't working all of it. And if you insist on it, we'll prosecute you for grand larceny. So that'll be part of this negotiated settlement. That's what I believe is going to happen. Chief Madry has 30 days. You're going to see those 30 days go by so fast. Oh, he's formally retired now. Once those 30 days go by, they can't lay a glove on him as far as the department. they could still lay a glove on him as far as if they're going to try to charge criminally. But as far as the department, once 30 days go by, now Lieutenant Quantisha Epps, she's already been suspended. She's suspended without pay right now. So what her attorney is insisting upon is that she immediately be reinstated to full duty and be put back on the payroll with back pay and all of those things. I don't see that happening. Mike, you're shaking your head.
Yeah. I remember being in the department advocate's office, and people would be suspended for 30 days and they'd win their case. And they would say, the union attorney would say, we want that back money because the person was found not guilty in the trial room. And the answer was from police headquarters, from the PC's office, no, absolutely not. You're not getting it. So that's the way it goes. So I don't see her getting the back pay. I think you're right. She's in. They're both in an interesting situation because of the way you look at it, she's looking at possible criminal charges. Even if she does get off and the NYPD, she's not charged with anything, whatever there is, this still could be referred to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for grand larceny. That could happen. And maybe if there's any sort of text messaging or emails or anything that shows that Madry knew what she was doing, encouraged her, directed somebody to sign those overtime slips, he could be in trouble too for conspiracy to commit grand larceny. So they're not both out of the woods, but I agree with you that both probably are going to get their pensions.
This smells of a negotiated settlement. I just want to mention also, how does this affect the entire police department, right? And then you see a picture there of Police Commissioner Jessica Tish, right?
Mm-hmm.
She has, according to the New York Times, on December 19th, she orders 500 officers back to key roles, right? Commissioner Jessica Tish is replacing the police department's head of communications, who had clashed with reporters and sending many officers back to patrol. She says she's trying to restore order to an agency reeling from chaos and dysfunction at the top, not at the bottom, at the top. The announcement came 10 days after Ms. Tish ordered 500 officers who had been improperly transferred from their permanent post to go back to their regular assignments, according to an internal police memo. That practice, known as telephone message transfers, had led to short staffing in parts of the department and slower emergency response times, according to the memo, which went out December 9th and was reported on Thursday by Gothamist. The police department has been shaken by the departure of 3 commissioners in an 18-month period, and a sense that Mayor Eric Adams, a former police captain, was in charge of the agency instead of the leaders he had appointed. On Monday, during a public safety meeting, Mr. Adams praised Ms. Tish's leadership since she was sworn in last month, including her decision to conduct an internal audit that led to the discovery that hundreds of officers had been placed in other units without authorization. So these are problems also. In the police department, if you're going to be transferred, it has to go through the Department of Personnel.
The chief personnel.
Then it goes out on a personnel orders.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways to sort of, I know they used to do it in the past, what they call a telephone message order.
Yes.
They just make a telephone message, but that's not cleared through the Department of Personnel. So that is showing that something's wrong at the command structure, that someone is allowing this to happen. And that cannot happen. So many of these people, we would call them inside people, administrative people, the palace guard, people that work at one police plaza.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them went from police officer to first grade detective. I'm not saying many, some from police officer to first grade detective in a 2 or 3 year span. That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Some of them didn't even have much time on the job. To give you a money perspective of that, a police officer, I don't know, makes about 50-something thousand a year when they start out. A first grade detective makes lieutenant's pay. which is, I don't know, maybe 160 something thousand a year. And then because they work for a big boss, they're allowed to make all kinds of crazy overtime. And this is where the problem lies. And meanwhile, there's guys in detective squads where I worked for 16 years of my career as a boss. And I can tell you, detectives work their asses off in detective squads, catching cases. They have to show the most competence probably of any position on the police department. Many of them never get grade. It's really disheartening and disgusting. And then these inside 1PP, they call them the palace guard, go from cop to first grade detective in 3 or 4 years. It's really disgusting, Mike.
Yeah, it's the people with the power have the privilege, and this it seems to be something that we knew a little bit about. Occasionally, you'd hear somebody would get transferred very quickly to come out as a telephone message, and somebody would be quickly moved from a precinct to a borough command or something like that by the order of the borough command or whatever, and then it would come out a couple of weeks later on the personnel orders. But it appears to be like something that was fairly recent phenomena where you would get people, deputy commissioners, captains, and people going into police headquarters or maybe say a borough command, and they would then, suck in all of their friends and put all of their friends in these made up positions that never existed before. And I'm wondering if some of these people have assigned cars, that they get a department car. Did Ms. Epps even get a department car with all the free gasoline and everything else? I knew a first grade detective. He was on call nonstop, and he had his own car. He was considered one of the greatest detectives in the NYPD. He worked like a maniac. This man was a machine. And if you were ever hunted down by this guy, you might as well just give up, because there's no rock in the middle of Tibet that you could hide under that he wouldn't find you. But you get these other things where people get first grade. It's like, wait a minute, didn't you get on the job 4 years ago? You're not even a top pay for patrolman, and you're first. How does that happen? And you shake your head. And it would be such a rare thing in the past, but now it seems to be endemic that these people would get brought in and they would fill up all these administrative positions to the point where the police commissioner is saying it's actually affecting emergency responses. Look, people may have their issues with Police Commissioner Tish, but being an outsider from sanitation department, she may not have a lot of preconceived notions about how things went in the NYPD and pre-existing relationships that may hurt the NYPD in its efficiency. I think this, so far from what I've heard about the police commissioner, I got to give her a thumbs up on what she's doing so far, and I'm really happy, because being an outsider, she doesn't have those long-standing relationships that may impede progress. I think that what she's doing is excellent.
Mike, that brings me back to Commissioner Tish there. Now, she's in charge of the police department, but the police commissioner acts at the pleasure of the mayor.
That's right.
Therefore, who really is the top police commissioner? The mayor is. The mayor is, right? Because if the police commissioner wants to make a decision that the mayor doesn't like, it's not going to happen, right? So say police commissioner Jessica Tish, right, who we see on the screen there, she says, I'm going to suspend Chief Madry. Do you think Mayor Adams is going to say, okay, yeah, do it? No way. No way is he going to say, okay, yeah, do that. So how much power does she really have? Because Madry is Mayor Adams's guy.
Yeah.
He's from his inner circle. So there's no way that's going to happen. So we can do all of this tough talk and say, oh, yes, I'm transferring this, I'm dumping this, I'm doing that. But you know something? It all has to pass muster with the mayor. And if he doesn't approve it, it's not going to happen, right? The whole culture of the police department goes back, 100 years, and doesn't happen overnight. And I can tell you right now, the NYPD is an unbelievable organization. It really is. Every once in a while, you have stains on the department like this. And let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. The NYPD still is the greatest police department on this earth. And every department in this country, in this world, looks toward the NYPD for leadership on the latest crime fighting techniques, on all the things. The NYPD invented CompStat, which drove down crime in almost every police department across this nation. And it was invented by a transit lieutenant with a high school degree named Jack Maple.
That's right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
You know, I have to brag about that. And we were part of dropping crime the most from the 1990s to the 2000s. And we were a model for police departments all across this nation. So all the people in the chat, MF and the NYPD, you can do that. But you know something? I'll always hold my head high. And Mike, I know you'll always hold your head high. And anyone that did this job, really did this job, or the real police, you know, you can hold your head high. And this is somewhat disgusting. But Tom Cusinelli, I like to pull your post because you're a man of wisdom. Yeah. The Post had a piece on Ray Kelly singing her praises. He had unkind words for the mayor, thinking out loud. Adams wanted a pardon. Maybe Trump told him to clean up the PD or else Trump loves cops. You know, Tom, I have a little theory about that. And I think that Trump is probably going to pardon Adams when his case goes through, if he, in fact, gets convicted, for his cooperation with the illegal alien problem in New York City, the sanctuaries. I think that deal has already been cut. And I don't really agree with it, but I think that's, what do they say? Politics has strange bedfellows.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's all part of it. You know, Mike, I think we covered this, but I hope we explained this situation. And look, this pains me. I mean, Jeffrey Maddrey, thank you for your service, almost 35 years. But you know something? There's an old expression on the police department. 1 million attaboys don't equal one shit.
That's right.
And what that simply means is you could have done 1 million things right. You do one thing wrong. That's a big one. Trade in all those attaboys for that one shit. Mike, your final thoughts.
I got one. You know, you're only as good on the NYPD. You're only as good as your last bad evaluation. That's what we used to say in the Bronx.
That's so true. That's so
But
true.
I just want to let people know that, look, the NYPD's we got 30,000 cops in the NYPD. We lead the world and the nation in innovative policing. We have tremendous capabilities. But every once in a while, people with their human frailties get into positions of power and they abuse their positions of power for their own selfish purposes. And so, you know, we just have to say, like you say, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know, we see this in politics, you know, nationally, we see it all the time. And this is an example of that sort of thing. But keep the faith. And, you know, thank you for everyone tuning in and watching POTC this year. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bad. Thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. Law enforcement around the entire world to kazoo Reverend Herbert Kid Daughtry and Killer Chell. I don't even know if that's really Herbert Daughtry's son or any relation. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see. I'm looking through the chat. Let's see what we got. This is why I like all viewpoints. I refuse to get tunnel vision, in my opinion. We try to give you, you know, we advertise right from the beginning of the show. This is true crime from a police perspective. This is our perspective. I'm not trying to be politically correct. My heart does belong to the NYPD, always will. But when something is done egregiously wrong like this, I have to point it out. And that's just the way it is, as they say. Retired Sergeant Melinda, oh my God, thank you so much for the $99.99 super sticker. Thankful for our NYPD and law enforcement officers. Melinda, thank you so much. Much, much, much appreciated. Mark M., best show on YouTube. Well, thank you. Thank you. And share us with your friends and your family. Appreciate that. Dawn Marie, so nice to see you here, Dawn Marie. Thank you for stopping by. Folks, that's pretty much our show for today. I mean, we wanted to bring this. I did a short show yesterday on this, and since then, there's been some new developments, but it's sort of, as I said, it breaks our heart. Cakes Boo, AU, thank you for the $10 super sticker. I love you guys so much. Well, Cakes Boo, thank you so much. We love all of our police off the cuff friends, family, fans. We really, Dorothy Navarro, you guys are awesome. Well, thank you, Dorothy. Very much appreciated. Dawn Marie, thank you so much, and we love you too. Yes, Dawn Marie, I'm glad to see you back here. Well, folks, as I said, thank you for tuning in today. Before you know it, it's going to be New Year's Eve and then 2025, and we got to start all over again. Start doing shows all over again in 2025. And thank you all for tuning in during 2024. Folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.